Cruise control has a dark side, and it's just helpful for drivers to understand the plus points and the negative points of cruise control. A few areas always generate a lot of debate. Please let me know in the comments what you think about cruise control, whether you use it all the time, whether it saves you fuel, and whether it improves your concentration, or you find it a bit of a distraction, or it causes you to become less attentive. Before we talk about what cruise control actually is and the various cruise control systems that are out there so we can understand how our car works specifically, it's just good to talk about some of the pitfalls or dangers of using cruise control. The cruise control is designed for a very specific set of conditions: dry, good visibility, open road with infrequent needs to make throttle adjustment. Ideal for cruising on motorways, taking up those long motorway stretches with ease. If those conditions change, it rains, visibility reduces, the amount of traffic on the road suddenly increases, the cruise control is going to be unaware of that, and it's still going to be carrying on regardless. It can't feel the road is icy. A good driver would be able to sense that the steering has gone light, or the inputs from the throttle or the brake and other feedback from the car would indicate you are starting to slip or perhaps aquaplaning. Cruise control doesn't have that degree of sensitivity, and some drivers have been caught out by it. So in adverse road conditions, cruise control can actually become a bit of a liability. Overtaking is another situation where some drivers will just use cruise control to increase the speed of the car and overtake. Now, a good professional driver will be using the throttle to match the balance of the car as he makes the turn to overtake, straightens up and then makes the turn in after the overtake. Cruise control is oblivious to that need for balance, and that can cause instability in the car's handling, particularly at the higher speeds that we find on our roads. It's the same when driving on twisty roads and bends. A driver will make adjustments to the throttle to control the balance through the car, but the cruise control will just carry on at a set speed regardless. And if the car is just controlled by cruise control, it is less stable, it is more likely to slip off the road, and the driver will be completely unaware because they've not been making these adjustments. They've not got that fine feel of the car's handling under those conditions through the corners. That can be a potential danger area that a lot of drivers are completely oblivious to. The history of cruise control is quite interesting. It was widely attributed to being invented by a chap called Ralph Tito in 1948. The concept first gained popularity during wartime in America, where the speed limit was dropped to 35 miles an hour, and the idea was to conserve fuel, and cruise control allowed drivers to cruise around at 35 miles an hour because most drivers would start drifting up and wasting this highly rationed, difficult to buy fuel. I wonder if we're going to see fuel rationing and restrictions on speed limits to cope with the current fuel crisis the world is facing. But we see three main types of cruise control system, and they all work slightly differently. Proportional control adjusts the car's throttle depending on how far away from the target speed we are. If you're quite a bit under the set speed, it will use more throttle to build you up to that speed, and then as you hit that speed, the throttle will back off. It's smooth enough on flat roads, but it can get confused on hills where more throttle is needed to make up the speed differential, and a good driver would just factor that in and control all of the momentum factors at play to maintain a steady speed. Proportional integral derivative control, PID for short, is slightly different because it adds time and distance into the equation. It actually performs a calculation. It anticipates the effect of a hill before the speed starts to drop significantly, and it'll apply more throttle earlier. It holds the speed more effectively and more accurately, and that's the system that is fitted to most modern cars. Iteration of cruise control with adaptive cruise control, and this uses a radar system and sometimes even cameras to determine your relative position to other cars on the road, and it maintains a safe distance that you can often set yourself, and as the flow of traffic decreases in speed, it will decrease your car's speed to follow at that safe distance, or that preset distance I should say. Some people may not have set that particularly safely. Always remember to leave a 3-second gap between you and the vehicle in front. The range of most of these radar systems, or the accurate range, is generally about 150 meters. So that sets a practical lower speed boundary for the system to actually work effectively. So below 20 miles an hour, for example, most systems will just not engage. You can't use them at those low speeds. And even stop-go traffic still requires input from drivers in most situations and setups. Now, heavy rain, snow, mud, adverse driving conditions can all affect the way the radar system works. If the sensor can't see, it can't protect you, it can't make good decisions, and it'd be an absolute folly to trust these systems when the conditions change. Now, does using cruise control improve your fuel economy? This is a big debate that people have had on previous videos that I've done on the topic, and generally I would say it depends on what type of driver you are. If you were a highly anticipative, reactive driver and you were good at reading the road ahead, then you'll probably be able to outperform your cruise control in terms of fuel economy. It often won't make correct decisions on hills. Most drivers prefer to build up a bit of speed on the downhill and let that speed tail off on the uphill. Also, inattentive drivers tend to let the speed drop down and then they pick it back up. And this deceleration and acceleration are killers of fuel. It's always more efficient to maintain a constant speed than to have this constant undulation of speed where the car is accelerating and then decelerating. And you may find it doesn't just depend on the driver, it depends on the road. You may find on flat, long motorways, cruise control is really good at maintaining fuel economy. And on hilly stretches or twisty roads, a good driver will be able to anticipate better and make better decisions, producing better fuel economy. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on cruise control and fuel economy, what you find to be the best setup, whether you rely on cruise control or whether you make the decisions yourself. Now, several drivers have commented on previous videos I've done that they would prefer a speed limiter to a cruise control. Now, the speed limiter will basically stop the car from going over the preset speed. And it's a good way of avoiding speeding fines. When you're in heavy traffic in busy city areas, you don't want to be constantly looking at your speedo and around the car. You just really want to focus on what's going on around the car. And just setting the car so it can't go over a set speed limit can take that distraction out of your mind and you can really focus on what's going on around you. Let me know what your thoughts are on speed limiters and whether you've actually used one or whether you like the idea of a speed limiter, particularly in areas that are littered with many different speed cameras and it's a high risk of getting a speeding ticket. In fact, intelligent speed assistance, where the car will automatically nudge your speed toward the speed limit, has become mandatory for a few years now in all cars sold in the EU, and I think other regions have probably had different introduction dates. And these range from very simple bongs and bings as you're driving to warn you, little lights flashing up on the dashboard, to easing off the throttle and actually decelerating the car if you're going over a speed limit. And it uses cameras to determine the speed limit in force. And a few drivers have commented that it's an annoying system when it recognises a speed sign on somewhere else, on a side road, for example, or on someone's t-shirt, and the car is trying to adjust the speed to match that. But in most cases, the system is fairly easy to override, although it becomes a distraction as you're trying to fight with the car. Now, does cruise control make you a more complacent driver? Two schools of thought here. First school of thought is saying that cruise control frees you up. You're not constantly looking at the speed, so you can focus your attention outside the car and on what's going on around you. And that type of driver who is alert and attentive to all the other things going on in the road will probably appreciate the rest. Their attention is not split anymore. They can actually focus on driving the car. Now, the other school of thought is that drivers find, because they're not looking at the speed, the brain tends to switch off. They become less attentive and effectively a more drowsy driver because the car is doing more for them. Now, I would argue that this is more about the driver's mentality than the car and the cruise control system. But please let me know in the comments what you think about cruise control. Does it make you a safer driver, or does it cause you to relax and maybe become a more dangerous driver? Does it lower your levels of alertness? Getting into a car with a totally different cruise control setup can be a distraction. These switches are not standardized, or they're not standardized enough. And the way to set the speed, raise the speed, pause the automatic cruise control or re-engage it is different in different models. And generally, if you get into a car where this system is unfamiliar to you, you'll be looking down at the cruise control stalk to make those adjustments. And that, in my opinion, is as dangerous as using a mobile phone. It probably makes sense to just sit down in the car and familiarize yourself with these controls before we drive off. But who's got the time to do that if you've just picked up a courtesy car, for example, and you've got to get to work or you've got other things to do? Now, there's some addendums that we really do need to add to this video on cruise control, and this is an area where you shouldn't be using cruise control at all, and many manufacturers recommend you switch it off. You don't use cruise control. When you're towing, the weight the car is pulling is much higher. The inertia that the car has to overcome is much greater, and that can cause problems with cruise control that is calibrated to a single car, maybe with 2 or 3 occupants. It particularly affects the cruise control system on gradients where the car was picking up speed, or whether it is losing speed on hills, because it'll lose speed a lot more quickly when you're towing. And in some cases it can cause malfunctions of the cruise control system because it is operating so far out of what it was designed to do. There have also been reports of cruise control throttle stuck scenarios where cruise control has not disengaged, or it's not disengaged as you would expect. Usually if you press the accelerator or just lightly tap the brake, the cruise control will switch off and revert control back to the driver. But a few people, that's not happened for whatever reason, and the car has just been bowling along at speed. The driver's panicked, lost control and hit something. It's really good to just understand that we can still use our brakes, we can still do an emergency stop, and actually heavy braking is usually enough to switch off the cruise control system. But do understand where the switch is on the cruise control system to disengage the system manually, and that'll avoid the scenario where your car is in this runaway condition, and it should stop you from panicking, making bad decisions and causing that collision. Legal responsibility always rests with the driver. Cruise control does not take responsibility for obeying the speed limits or driving at a safe speed or a safe distance from the cars in front. Delegating that to a computer is foolish. Even if the car had an autopilot system set up, I personally would not trust it. Let me know what your thoughts are on cars that drive themselves, autonomous systems, or even semi-autonomous systems that make most driver decisions for you. Muscle memory degradation, where the driver has relied too much on cruise control, they almost lose the ability to make those fine throttle adjustments to maintain a constant steady speed. It just depends on the driver's mentality and whether they've relied and delegated on that and they've lost their good driving habits, or whether they're keen to maintain those good driving habits that they've built up. I hope this video has been a bit of an eye-opener to you about cruise control. It certainly was interesting for me to just research it and see the differences in the systems and the different ways they work and the potential pitfalls and dangers of using a cruise control system. But I would argue if we're a good advanced driver, we've got very little to worry about. We will use our brains and override any silly things that the car is doing. If you've enjoyed the video, please boot the like button. If you're not subscribed, do so. We've got lots of videos coming up on how to use technology in your car to the best effect to promote better, safer driving, more economical driving, and just generally to improve driver enjoyment. And with that in mind, you're going to like this video and this playlist that I've lined up for you. Thanks for watching. See you in these next videos.